I have a comment to make about the video that I just watched that I will link to in the description of this video, in that Eric Dollard divides electricity up into 3 component parts, and Edward Leedskalnin subdivides it into 7. And I was thinking about, okay, how does the math work on that if they're talking about the same thing, assuming that they are? And it kind of does work out. Not kind of, it could work out very exactly, and in very nice ways. So let me explain. If we take Edward Leedskalnin's 7 and divide it into 2 groups of 2 and 5, and consider the 5 to be a singularity from, what's that guy's name? Eric Dollard's point of view, then we end up with the 3 ingredients of electricity according to Eric Dollard. See? So and the one that's subdivided into 5 partitions is the one of time. Now, what does the Vedic perspective say? The Vedic perspective says that prana is vibration, and vibration implies time, frequency. So, and there are 5 qualities to prana. It's a 5 in 1, 1 in 5 situation in which it's really not 5 different things. It's one thing expressing itself, potentially speaking, in 5 different ways. And we know this because that's the way Leon Ernest Ehman experienced it when he took one segment of his biocircuit, one wire, linking 2 points, broke the wire in the middle, cut it, immersed the cut ends, probably stripped them, the 2 ends, but whatever, immersing the 2 ends in a beaker of water and dissolving 2 aspirin in that beaker. And so this lady they had a session of 4 people, a cooperative healing of 4 people in a biocircuit. One of them, a lady, had a fever, and her fever went down by half, and everybody else got flush, a little bit warm. And Leon decided, oh, I can take this further, I bet. So he cut the wire, and her fever went away completely. So nobody ingested the aspirin. It was the signature of the aspirin that was being carried through the bodies to reduce her temperature. And the signature was being carried by a carrier wave being supplied by the bodies themselves. But what was it? Because Leon did another experiment. What kind of energy? Because Leon did another experiment in which a friend, I think his last name was Mayberry, I don't know, I forget. This is all in Leon's book, the big, huge book that Leon talks about his discovery. This fellow, in the appendix or somewhere, letters to Leon, he suggested, well, why don't you cut the ends and lay them on a plate of glass? And he did that. We had a glass table, and he laid the cut ends on and the energy traveled just as nicely across so-called empty space between the 2 cut ends of wire along the glass. And the glass is a dielectric, so it can't be electricity that's flowing. It's something else. Now, Karl von Reichenbach made a series of statements in which he talked about the odic force. And he said there are 5 substances which transmit the odic force, and 1 set of or group of substances that insulates against it. And that insulator was like wood, paper, wood. But the 5 substances were water, silk, resin, plant sap, glass, and metal. And I thought about that, well, 5 sounds like prana again. So since prana is 5 in 1, and when I mapped it out in my head, it very readily became apparent that water transmits apana, which has to do with elimination, that quality of prana which is eliminative, and is a force that goes down the spine of a human being to eliminate, but also can sometimes go the wrong direction upwards when we puke, sneeze, hiccup, those kinds of things. Yawn. Udana goes upwards normally and is related to glass and has to do with thought, but also the ability to walk on glass and hot coals and not be affected, and possibly levitation, but human levitation. We'll keep it localized to that. Silk transmits samana, which is digestion, the digestive fire in the stomach. Vyana is circulation in the body, and I believe it pertains to electricity, current, the current aspect of electricity. Meanwhile, resin has to do with the See, prana is funny. They've got 4 names that are distinctly different from the generic term of prana, and then they reuse the word prana for a subset, one of the 5 subsets, which is the breath, which they call prana. And that, I believe, is the resin, the tree sap, plant sap, which is also the lymphatic fluid of the body, which is the liquid portion of the bloodstream. Okay? So, because they look the same. Healthy lymphatic fluid is amber, just like tree sap. So, what I suspect, and then now Wilhelm Reich, who developed the Cloudbuster, his and James DeMeo has revived it, and Trevor Constable also for a period of time in the evolution of his development of rainmaking also made use of Wilhelm Reich's Cloudbuster before he went on to other things. But the Cloudbuster machine has to be grounded in a moving body of water to eliminate the electrostatic field of the cloud. Duh. And ground it out to the earth, because the tubes that he uses in the Cloudbuster to point at the cloud or the edge or whatever he's pointing at is a waveguide, an aerial waveguide. Just like we have, parabolic dishes on the football field to pick up sounds from the football players and, pipe it into the, sound system and say, and this is what, the umpire is saying. They don't do it to the huddle. They don't want to do that. But they do it to the umpire so they can get what the umpire is saying. Before they had microphones on the umpires, they would do this, whatever. So like that, but slightly different, because the waveguide is shaped differently. Now we have tubes that have different lengths, similar to the tubes on a pipe organ. And I suspect that's why they are different lengths. But I don't know this. I just suspect it. Just taking a guess estimate off the top of my head. But it is a waveguide meant to entrain itself to the electrostatic field of a cloud, which is an electrostatic field, because a UFO can create one and hide itself in a cloud. And it's interesting that you have to use a moving body of water, because you're trying to ionize that body, and you got to quickly refresh it with fresh new water, or else you're not going to be able to ionize it anymore. It's going to become saturated. So you have to have fresh water flowing past the ground, which are metallic conduit. So an extension of the metal pipes is more metal piping, but it's conduit, flexible conduit, like electrical conduit in buildings, in the walls of buildings. They have plastic conduit, but they also have metallic conduit. And so we use conduit to ground the ends of the tubes opposite the end that's pointed at the cloud to a moving body of water, such as a stream. Because he was ionizing the stream, because he was ionizing the cloud to de-electrify it, to take away its electric field. So that's kind of an example of water. Elimination. He's eliminating an electric field using a moving body of water. So we have 3 examples there. Apana, elimination, the water. And Vyana, metal, wire, copper, circulation of current. And tree resin, or tree sap, or plant sap. Now this has to do with that aspect of parametric excitation via electrical reactance, which has to do with either the expansion or contraction of energy. Or, expansion or contraction of reactance. Particularly negative unity power factor reactance. And I have to say that very carefully, because the other 2 elements out of the 5, minus the 5, making up 7 of Edward Leedskalnin's point of view, is electrical reactance, capacitive and inductive reactance. But the aspect of time that regulates, now this is going to, electrical reactance formulas do not state implicitly, or I should say explicitly, positive or negative resistance. Yet if I was to place them anywhere, I would place negative resistance in the denominator of the formula for capacitive reactance, and positive resistance in the numerator of inductive reactance because inductive reactance doesn't have a denominator. It's the number 1 is the denominator. Because that's the way coils are considered. They are considered sinks of reactance. Well, yeah, because it's positive resistor. It's a positive. The inductive reactance of a coil is a positive resistor, while the capacitive reactance of a capacitor is a negative resistor. It actually accelerates the supposed appearance of current, even though it's an obstructor of current. If you tweak things right, it can do that. But so I suspect this is the breath, because we expand and we contract. See, when you're doing parametric excitation, it can go either way. You can increase the reactance volume, the volume of reactance, or you can diminish it within a period of time. So you can have more to convert, more to convert through power factor correction back into energy than what you had to stimulate it in the first place, to react off of in the first place. Or less. It can go away. It can disappear. Whew. And now another example is Gabriel Cron. He boasted that you could give him any circuit of your design, and he could take you could select 2 points, any 2 points of your choice in that circuit, 2 junctions, or 2 points, any 2 points in that circuit, and you could choose whether you want him to increase the energy there or diminish it, like magic. So this is the breath, to expand or contract reactance, and then to correct for it and turn it back into energy and have it show up in the circuit of any circuit of your choosing. That's pretty cool. Gabriel Cron knew his stuff. And it was all owned by the company that he worked for, so he couldn't tell us how he did it. But he did have volumes of books, huge. Oh, I don't even bother to read them. Huge, they're phone book size. Multiple volumes on the topic. So if you can plow through there and understand what he's saying, you can probably figure out how he did it. If you're knowledgeable enough, which I am not. I'm not formally trained, so there's no way I'm going to try to attempt reading those volumes. I just feel my way through this stuff. I get a vague general feel for the subject matter, enough to know we have not been told everything. That's enough. I don't have to know much more. A few details, but not too much. It's ugly enough as it is. The political scene of science is ugly. Anyway, I don't want to be negative. So this is my way to interpret, to integrate what Edward Leedskalnin has been quoted as saying versus what Eric Dollard has been quoted as saying. They are saying the same thing, but in a different way. Okay? That's my little take on the situation.